Cool, Andrew, welcome. So yeah, let's start off. If you could give a little bit of an overview of who you are, and a little bit about Canny and the product you're building.
Definitely. Yeah, Yossi, thank you so much for having me on. My name's Andrew, and I am a co-founder here at Canny. Canny is a customer feedback tool. We are a 12-person bootstrap startup, and so we've never taken any outside funding and have kind of just been able to build the team and the product out all from our own profits and revenue along the way. Started Canny about 7 years ago, and like I said, we're 12 people, 3 million in annual revenue. I think there's 600 customers and thousands of companies worldwide using Canny. We've got a free plan as well. And so, yeah, that's us.
So tell me, why did you, what inspired you to start Canny? Where did the idea come from for the product, or, sort of what inspired you to get going with it?
Sure, yeah. Canny was started by myself. I'm a software engineer, and my co-founder, Sarah, who's a product designer. And we're product people. And so, just using the products that we used every day, I think it was like Netflix and Spotify and like League of Legends, just like, I don't know, random things that everybody uses, We had ideas for how to improve the products that we used on a day-to-day basis. And if you ever try giving feedback to a big company, it's a really bad experience. You don't really hear back from them on if your feedback's going to be implemented, if they think it's a good idea, did it actually make it to the product team, when is it going to be built, or why isn't it going to be built? It's pretty sad. And so it makes you kind of not want to give feedback. And so we wanted to work on problems in the user feedback space. And we ended up discovering that it's actually a really painful problem from the business's perspective too, because, collecting and tracking feedback at scale to make sure you're building the right features to grow your business is really important. And so we were able to, build a product, start charging for it, and, help people get their feedback heard.
Nice. Yeah, I'm fascinated because, you're coming into a space where there is, a bunch of other products doing similar stuff. How does that, how do you sort of map out the whole world and work out where you fit in, and how you're the same and how you're different, and how you're trying to be different in a space where there might be tools that people might see as similar, and how do you try and be different? And then also, just to follow on from that, as as a sort of a follow on would be, when you're selling to clients, why do they just decide to go with you over a different tool?
Definitely. When we started out, I think we were charging $19 a month. And so we had a really simple product, and it was like $19 a month. And so for a lot of people, they're like, oh, this looks cool, I'll buy this. Why not? And it's kind of like, really low investment, just like a simple, elegant product. Over time, now our cheapest pricing plan is $400 a month, and you get a much more serious buyer at that price point. And so these days, we're in the conversation when somebody's considering buying, a customer feedback tool from one of the main players in the market. We're in that conversation most of the time. And so that's really cool. And we've gotten there just by having, the features that people want, and also product quality is really where we stand out among the competition. People, when they switch from some of our bigger competitors, say that Canny's like a breath of fresh air. And I think that comes down to us just being started by product people, by an engineer and a product designer. We really care about product. That's what we're best at. And trying to figure out sales and marketing along the way.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So, so tell me a little bit about your background. I know that you previously, were at Facebook, and been involved in the React team there. Tell us a little bit about that, and also what it was like for working such a, mammoth company.
Sure thing. I mean, I joined in 2013. It wasn't as big of a company back then. That was 9 years ago. And it was really an amazing experience for me. I joined as a new grad, and I remember, the guy who invented React sat 3 desks away from me, and the woman that invented Relay and the guy that invented GraphQL was my engineering manager. They're all like on my team. And so I got to learn from some of the industry's greatest minds in open source these days. And it was a super beneficial experience for me. I don't take any credit over the React project. Like, I was, a new grad kind of working on what needed to be built, but it was super great for me to work on that. But at the end of the day, Facebook's a really big company. Even back then it was pretty big. And I kind of decided that it's too comfortable and I had to go take some risks and build my own thing.
Nice. That is awesome. What's your take on React in general, in terms of, if you have sort of someone in engineering and they're trying to decide what tool to use, whether or not it's a JavaScript framework or whether or not it's a different, sort of framework altogether. What's your take on, how someone should decide what front end technology to use and how to process all that data? It's always like a hotly debated topic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, personally, I love React. We use React very heavily, and I feel like React kind of won the framework war. A lot of people might joke around, or the joke, 5 years ago used to be that there's a new framework everybody's using every year, but these days that's not the case anymore. Vue.js came out, and some people are using them, but it's nowhere near as prominent as React, and React has kind of won that war to some extent. And so, yeah, if somebody was starting out today and you're trying to hire people that have experience in that technology and you're looking for something scalable, like React is kind of the no-brainer choice to me.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that point. It's sort of, there was always these debates, Angular, React, all different things that were flying around at one point, and then just seems that React sort of won. Why do you think that is?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't think I have the answer to that. I know, back then there was like way back, there was jQuery, and jQuery was just like a bucket of functions, a bucket of utility functions, not enough structure. If you use jQuery, your app's going to be very unstructured and kind of a mess unless you're super, good at setting patterns. And so obviously we need a little bit more structure. And then, there was like, Ember and all this other stuff, Angular. I feel like React just maybe found the right structure. I think there was an incremental approach, but personally, I didn't use Angular or Ember or stuff like that, and so I don't think I can really answer that question. But it feels like what React has found has really been like a structure that a lot of people understand and can scale to a really large application and solve all the different problems that need to be solved. And so I think they just found the the sweet spot.
Yeah, nice. So, what does a typical day look like for you in Canny?
Sure thing. I mean, we are a 12-person company, and so I am very much a doer, not just a leader. These days, I'm doing a lot of sales and recruiting, and so just talking to customers, trying to tell them about Canny and about why it's going to solve their problem, and trying to fill roles. We recently had, I think, 5 open roles. We filled 2 of them, so now I have 3 open roles left. And yeah, just talking to candidates, lots of meetings, not my typical, schedule when I was working at Facebook.
Nice. I am fascinated. There's a question I definitely have to ask you. We are also a bootstrap company. And I want to know your take on being bootstrapped, why you decided to do that, if you plan on remaining bootstrapped, and how you see that. I think it was super cool over the past 2 years to sort of do all these like massive rounds of funding and things like that. Now you're probably looking like the genius because lots of things are changing in the economy and things like that. And I think, obviously, I think people are looking for healthy, revenue generating, profitable companies. And by being bootstrapped, you're by definition usually profitable, I would imagine, yep. Unless you somehow magically, made some money somewhere else. So yeah, I'm curious to know what your take is on being bootstrapped, how that feels, and what your plan is in the long term.
Yeah, definitely. Have a lot of thoughts on that subject. We've decided that we're never going to raise money. We've just made that, and sometimes investors reach out and we tell them, "Listen, we're not going to raise money. I don't think this is a good use of either of our time." And the reason is, I mean, we weren't always that way. We in the early days, I think in 2015, we interviewed at Y Combinator, and basically they didn't fund us. They gave us the feedback that they didn't think we could build a big enough business. And I think they're right in some way in that, we don't want to build $1 billion company. We don't want to go public. We don't want to hire 1,000 employees. And it's like, we're happy to just be a small company with, happy customers and a good product and a happy team. I think, it would be maybe good for the world if we weren't so capitalist and people were more excited to just build happy small companies with good products and happy customers, happy teams. And so yeah, there's that. But I mean, there's no wrong path. If you want to build a really big company and have an insane impact on the world, think about Uber, Airbnb, just the immense impact that these companies have had on the world, go for it. That's you're welcome to do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that path. I think it's just not the path for us.
That is super cool. But you'll probably accidentally build $1 billion company if you do it that way, if you ask me.
I hope not.
So, well, I mean, if you got to $3 million ARR, then why wouldn't you get to 100? So, potentially. I mean, but like
Sure.
you said, if you're focusing on quality and enjoying yourself along the way, that sounds pretty cool to me, I think. Um, I'm not sure how much you are into the stuff from Jason Fried and the guys from Basecamp and stuff like that, but
Yeah.
they have a very similar approach as well, where I think they did do one very small round, but it was like for a different sort of strategic reason. But otherwise, they basically never raised money as well, and they've built, a super popular product, and they actually incidentally ended up building a company that's probably would be worth billions of dollars. But, I'm not sure how much you follow their stuff, if you have sort of come across Basecamp.
A little bit, definitely. Yeah. It's hard to build a bootstrap company and not come across their stuff for sure. I think there's definitely some prominent leaders in the bootstrap space, kind of, writing the content that everybody's been reading about that path. Yeah.
Yeah, you remind me a little bit of him, so that's a compliment. So definitely check him out. So you're saying like right now you're like even diving into things like sales and stuff like that. So you're like actually getting on sales calls and closing deals and stuff like that too.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I think in a given week, I have anywhere from 5 to 15 meetings, and they're all sales and recruiting and one-on-ones with the engineers on our team.
Wow. Oh, that's super cool. So tell me a little bit more about your team, and your team structure and sort of how many people you manage, all that sort of stuff.
Sure thing. Yeah, we're 12 people. So Sarah and I are the founders, and then we have 4 engineers. We just hired a designer and a salesperson, and so we're going to be transitioning sales off to her shortly here. We have 2 people in marketing and 1 in customer support, 1 in customer success. And so at this point, we kind of have a lot of the main functions covered. Our approach was just to hire experts, people that are a lot better than us at those functions. For example, sales, marketing, to come in and help us own that. So we partnered with a head of marketing, Eric, to do marketing way better than we ever could, and that makes me super happy to have him on board and stuff like that. But at 12 people, we still very much there's a lot of work that needs doing that kind of only we can do, and so it's been a transitionary process to try to figure out how to get to the point where Sarah and I aren't doing all the work. I guess just learning more about delegation and filling more parts of the company.
Yeah. Awesome. And what about some of the challenges that you've had in, sort of tips and stuff like that you picked up along the way in sort of scaling your team?
Yeah. I'll say recruiting is really hard. Just like finding great people that the whole team is excited about hiring for a given role, especially for sales is very challenging. For engineering is very challenging. There's certain roles that are extremely challenging. For a while, we were trying to hire a recruiter, and I think we spent a year trying to hire a recruiter, and hiring recruiters is really difficult. It's gotten a little bit easier, but still very, very difficult. And I think a lot of what we've kind of learned is in how to approach those problems. And so one big thing that has kind of dawned upon me is considering career growth when you have an open role. And so, for example, let's say you're hiring like an SDR, right? Like an entry-level salesperson to come in and, drum up business. What's their job going to look like in a year, in 2 years? Are they still going to be happy being like an entry-level SDR, or are they going to be ready for a next step? What is that next step? Do you have that next step for them at your company? And if you don't, they're going to leave and go somewhere else, and you're going to have this kind of revolving door problem. And so considering kind of long-term growth in a role is super important. And also just telling people why your company is so great. Like we have a piece of content that we put on all of our job listings. That's, why work at Canny. And I think just having that post with, quotes from our team about, why working at Canny is great and all the different reasons we're remote, we're bootstrapped, we're profitable, we're growing. And just telling people, this is why you should want to work here, I think really gets a lot of interest in quality candidates.
That is cool. I'm actually pretty fascinated. Like, what do you think it is when you have an engineer that might have an option of working in sort of, a massive company or a, massively funded startup and things like that? Why do they come and decide to work for you guys, or at least from your perspective?
Yeah,
Besides
definitely.
being awesome.
Yes, certainly. I mean, I think they're like working at a big company is definitely a great job. It's got a lot of stability, and usually the pay is really high. And so we compete with I think, some people are specifically looking to get into startups. They're like, oh, I love startups, love small companies, love small teams. And I'm just looking for that. And being a bootstrapped, profitable company is really advantageous because investors, a lot of people have bad experiences with investors. Maybe they felt like they had to grow at all costs and they had to make decisions that they didn't feel comfortable with, or they had to work really hard, or whatever it was. And a lot of people have been soured by having investors on the board. And so I think when people hear that we're bootstrapped and profitable, we don't have to grow at all costs. Like, we're happy to go at our own pace, and kind of, companies not going anywhere in 1 year, 2 years if we don't get our next funding round. That really resonates with a lot of people. Not everyone, for sure. Some people are looking for that rocket ship, and we just kind of tell them, if you're looking for a rocket ship, that's not us,
That is super cool. That resonates a lot with me, and that's cool. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
How would you balance that with sort of still trying to have aggressive goals and things like that? Or are you, sort of, if you're trying to balance and sort of say, look, we still want to grow, have targets and have growth targets and things like that, but also growing at your own pace. How do you sort of balance that?
Yeah, definitely. The last couple of years, we've been growing about 80% annually, which is fast for me, but slow for a venture-backed company. I think if you were a venture-backed company our stage, you'd be trying to triple annually, so 200%. And so we're growing like less than half what a perfect VC company would try to grow. But at 80% annually, if your team's 10 people, you're 18 next year. If you have 1,000 customers, you have 1,800 customers next year. Like, that's still quite a lot of change in a year, to the point where it feels like enough. It's like, yeah. And so I think almost doubling annually at our stage is a good pace. It's like, things are changing, and it's interesting. People have room for career growth because things are changing, because, we need to hire more people, or we need to, add more job functions. And so I think it's a good pace. I think if we were trying to triple annually, that just feels very fast and aggressive to me. And so, yeah, I think growth is important, but like, some growth, not crazy growth, is a comfortable pace for me.
Yeah, I think almost doubling every year sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So actually, that's around about the same growth rate that we've been going through as well. So we have the same thing. We have competitors out there that are doing these massive rounds and things like that, and then they just have to follow suit with massive amounts of growth. And I'm actually very happy we had this chat. I like what I'm enjoying what you're saying, and it's resonating a lot with me. I have very similar experiences in that regard, and it's even now with the size we are. It takes a long time to get to know everyone, to make sure everyone's happy, and I can't understand how people do that when they say, "Oh, we're just hiring 100 people in a month," or whatever it is, and how do you get to know them? And I think that's when culture can go. I mean, if you do it really well, and if everything's aligned, it can work out really, really well. But I think if things go wrong, then it could be really, culture can just go off in one direction, and people are on a completely different page, and it could be a bad, environment and things like that. So I definitely think that sounds great. So with regards to your interview process, and sort of how you filter through lots of different candidates that might come in and things like that, what's any sort of tips and tricks that you have around sort of hiring, interviewing?
Yeah. We've set up a really good process with a tool called Recruity that we use. Recruity, we're mutual customers with Recruity, and so they use us for customer feedback, and we use them for recruiting, and we're super happy to do that. But yeah, they're basically like an ATS, and so they're a simple version of like Lever or Greenhouse. I think are kind of the two main big ones, but those ones feel a lot like Jira or Salesforce. It's like very like enterprise tools, and so we set up a lot of automation to the point where it's like, if you want to reject someone, you just click a button, and 24, 48 hours later, they get an email letting them know. So you don't have to write that email. If you want to move someone to the next stage, you just drag and drop, and they will automatically get the invite to set that up. And so just so much automation in every role helps us process like 1,000 candidates a month, right? And so we can really work on inbound. And on top of that, we try to move fast. And so like if an interview goes well, if I'm on a call with a candidate and it goes well and I want to move fast, I will click that move forward button right after the interview. And so they get that email to schedule it literally within 15 minutes of the call. And just being able to like put somebody through 4 or 5 interviews in, a week or 2 instead of like a month, I think lets people know that like we're a serious company and that, we do things really well here. And that we're serious about them. And that's been big for us.
That's cool. So moving on to a bit more product related side of things. So what about some fun stories, of sort of good things that have happened or maybe not so good things that have happened, since you've started building your product?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll start with the not so good thing. One thing that's rang true like over and over and over and over is that the deal's not done till it's done. We've had this, maybe this is less product related, but definitely like building a startup, sales or recruiting, we've had job offers fall through at the last second, or we've had like deals fall through at the last second. I think deals not done till it's done is something that's rang true. And so don't celebrate too early has been a big learning lesson there. Fun stories of good things. I'm trying to think of anything in the product specifically. We've had features for sure where, it was like our top requested feature. And the way we knew that was with our own product with Canny, like people can, vote on features. And so I remember when we just launched, a lot of people were asking for an intercom integration. And back then it was like 50 or 60 people was a lot for us. And we built it and we got a ton of business from it. It was like super, super important. And I think we were the only product in the market that had an intercom integration back then. And so that was really good for us. And so, yeah, just like, understanding what people want and then building it. Obviously that's the business we're in. I don't want to just like plug our product, but that was super successful for us. One
Very
thing
cool.
that has been a blast is team retreats. Is like we hired a lot of people during the pandemic, and there were people where we worked together for a year and a half without ever meeting them in person. And then just recently in May, we went to Barcelona and had a team retreat and, met face to face for the first time in like 18 months, which was crazy, just to get everybody together. We rented like a 10-bedroom villa and had a pool and all that. And it was amazing. And so getting to get people together in a remote world is super rewarding.
That sounds cool. That is really cool. I love that idea of the team retreats. So we've done mini ones. It's obviously been a little hard recently, but it's something that we definitely want to do as a company.
Yep.
Everyone is super excited to do that in UpStack as well. So that sounds cool. So how did you coordinate that? Like everyone, where are most of your team in the US or all around the world in terms of remote?
We're 12 people in 5 countries. And so Estonia, Turkey, Spain, US and Canada. And so North America and Europe are the 2 continents, which pretty much means we should do a retreat in either, North America or Europe. And half the team either has to fly to Europe or fly to North America, which isn't so bad. It's doable like once or twice a year. And so, yeah, we, pick dates and then we pick a location and then we book flights, book accommodations, and then start planning all the fun stuff. Like, what are we doing? What are the activities? We like to do an escape room. I think every retreat we've ever done, we've done an escape room. I find it's a super fun, like team building event. And yeah, that's kind of the process.
That is very cool. So one of the things that I always found from, speaking to loads of different, engineers and product builders and startup founders is that, the thing that really motivates them is that feeling and that satisfaction of building a product that users love and that are appreciated by users. And so there's always that moment that you have where it's just really, really satisfying pushing out a new product or you're pushing out a new feature and it just feels sort of, magical or fantastic. What have you got anything along those lines when you're thinking of Canny and moments that you had where you were like, oh, wow, I suppose that's sort of like the aha or the wow moments, along the way?
Yeah. I think, this is maybe a little bit different than what you're asking, but when we started charging money, it was definitely an aha moment. When we started Canny, we didn't know it was going to be a SaaS tool. We kind of just thought we'd build a product that people can leave user feedback on, like a community, like a forum kind of thing. And we didn't think, oh, let's make a SaaS tool, let's charge a subscription and we changed it, and we're like, oh, let's charge $19 a month, and we started getting customers. And I remember we got like our first customer for $19 a month, and just like in my head, I was like, okay, we can get like 10,000 of these customers. This is we're gonna do it. You know, it's like people can pay if people will pay for this, and we've just built like this small amount, then you know it's crazy what we can do in the future. And so, yeah,
Wow.
like anytime we do something with pricing and people, you know, pay is really crazy to me. I think a lot of engineers don't value the things that they build because it feels so easy for them to build it. You know, I can just write this code, I can just write this product really easily. But, you know, to other people that can't build apps or don't have, you know, the resources to build the application, then having that application available is very valuable to them. And charging for that is an amazing moment for engineers that haven't done it before.
That is super cool. That definitely resonates. I think, you know, if someone's willing to pay for something, then it just also means that they appreciate it more, right?
Yeah.
And that they like it more, and that, you know, they're willing to pull out their credit card. So it also means that you might even end up getting different sorts of customers as well, you know, if you are charging different price points and stuff like that.
Yep.
So, you know, but yeah, I mean, I find that, you know, there are some startups out there who are charging, you know, even, you know, 5 or 10 times the price of other companies, and they're just really focusing on building a great product. And it's hard to not go with them sometimes too, because then, you know, so I think a lot of the time people think, well, if you're the cheapest or whatever, you can compete on price. But that might not always be the case.
Definitely. Yeah. No, anytime you ever talk to an investor, they're like, why are you charging so little? You know, why don't you charge more? And it seems like a lot of investors have really learned that in order to build a big SaaS business, you need to charge a lot. You know, it's like the mid-market and enterprise customers are worth so much more than the smaller ones. And so I think we've kind of taken a note out of their book hesitantly, you know, and we charge a lot now. I think our price point starts at $400 a month, which is pretty sizable, you know, $5,000 a year for a user feedback tool. And so we're looking for people that have big problems and, you know, we're looking to solve them.
And do you find you get different product requests on different needs and requirements for sort of that size company as you would if they were sort of much smaller? Or
yeah, we've raised prices, you know, multiple times over the years, and I find every time we raise prices, it's almost like we have to grow into that price point. And so we just raised from, you know, 200 to 400 per month. And I think we're getting some new feedback, but I think it's good feedback. It's stuff that we should build, stuff that we should have, stuff that does solve problems. And so I really like that, because it's like, oh, you know, it's more expensive, but we need to grow into that price and we need to solve problems to fit that. And so we are, you know, rapidly developing kind of those features in order to solve problems.
yeah, one of the classic things that I mentioned Jason Fried before, but one of the classic things that he talks about with Basecamp is, you know, also saying no to certain features, things like that. Have you ever come across a situation where you're like being asked something, even if it's from a few customers or a big customer, but you know that it's just not the path you want to go on, and even if you're going to lose that customer, do you ever have to balance that?
Yeah, I mean, I think saying no to customers, that's an interesting one. I almost feel like that's very relevant in the consumer space, but less relevant in the enterprise B2B space. You know, like usually the reason that you say no to a customer is because they are prescribing a solution that is not the right solution. You know, like they have a problem and they're trying to solve it in a weird way that isn't the right way to solve it. And you need to understand their problem and prescribe the correct solution. But like with a B2B enterprise customer, they're a very sophisticated buyer. You know, if they want a Salesforce integration, they want a Salesforce integration. Like they kind of know what they want. And so I think we've found that, you know, enterprise customers usually know pretty well what they want. It's just a matter of sizing up that feature and thinking like, okay, do other customers want this too? Or is this a one-off, right? Like, is this the right thing for us to prioritize right now? But yeah, I'll say that. I think usually they're good, you know, they're good features. It's just a matter of like, is right now the correct time?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what about like tools and processes that you use, stuff that you love to use on a day-to-day basis, something that you couldn't imagine living without?
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned Recruity before. I really like Recruity. I think, you know, we used to do recruiting via email. And so people would just shoot us an email, and these days we get like 1,000 applicants a month. And so imagine having 1,000 emails per month in your inbox that you just have to like read the resume and reply to. It's insane. And so having a recruiting tool with automation built in is amazing. On top of that, we use Missive for email. and we've used them. We're also mutual customers with them, and they're also bootstrapped. We've used them for, probably 5 years, and they've used us for 5 years. And so it's like, it's similar to Front. And so basically it's like a team communication tool. And so I could, for example, like assign an email to you, or we could have like a little chat session about an email, stuff like that, and collaborate on email instead of, Gmail, where it's very like individual. And so, yeah, Missive has been our email communication tool that makes email really fun and easy.
Wow. I have to check those out. I haven't heard of them.
Yeah. On top of that, HubSpot has been really interesting for me. Coming from the engineering world, the idea of a CRM doesn't sound that appealing, but once you own a SaaS business and, understanding where customers are coming from and, where they're dropping off in your pipeline and stuff like that, having a CRM is insanely useful and valuable. And so we took a lot of time to set up HubSpot, and that has been really, really great for us.
Awesome. That is cool. So I suppose in conclusion, is there some sort of simple message or something you'd like to share with developers? A lot of the time, there are developers that are deciding, do I want to, start growing a team and managing a team? It sounds like you wear multiple hats, so you're in a unique situation. But say there was an engineer who's deciding, like, do I want to stay as a developer? Do I want to move into more engineering management role? What would be your feedback to them, or, from your experience or things you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's this common misconception in engineering where you kind of feel like in order to continue growing in your career, you need to become a manager. And I don't think that's correct at all. Like, I think being a really good engineer does not mean that you'll make a great manager. The skills are very different. And so, yeah, I think if you're a really great engineer, really think hard about whether becoming a manager is the correct choice for you, for your skills. For me, like, I'm pretty introverted. And so doing, 15 calls a week is extremely draining for me. And so I think I'm not a great salesperson. I'm not a great recruiter. I can do it for a bit, but I can't do it forever. And same with engineering management. I think I'm not a great, engineering manager. I feel like we need to hire an engineering manager at some point that can do it a lot better than me. And so, yeah, I think really consider your own skills and what you're great at, and if management is right for you. And a lot of companies have an IC path where you can stay an engineer and grow just as much as an engineer. I know at Facebook, you could basically become like a senior staff engineer and then switch directly over to director, which, you're like managing managers who manage managers, like you're super, super senior. And so the path usually goes very deep in both directions. And if management isn't right for you, maybe stick on the IC path.
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. And what about tools that you use for managing your dev process? Is there a tool that you like to use for that in terms of your managing your backlog and your, overall, product roadmap, that sort of stuff?
Sure. I mean, we use Canny for that. Canny has over 1,000 features that have either been requested by our customers or that our team thinks are good ideas. And so that's kind of our backlog of just like, here's stuff that we should, track and keep in mind, but maybe we're not building it right this second. And then we make a quarterly roadmap also in Canny. And it's, we might add like 100 ideas on there of like, this is stuff that we should be thinking about this quarter. And then we can, score it, impact and effort, prioritize, sort by what's most important. And then we really give engineers a lot of freedom. And so it's like, what do you think is the most, correct feature for you? Do you care more about back end, more about front end? Do you want to build an integration? Like, what's interesting to you? You don't have to build the first thing on the list, but, try to build something that's in the top 5, top 10. And so, yeah, that's kind of our process.
So you can actually use Canny for even sort of your day-to-day sort of being able to sort of see what's in progress and things like that, what's being worked on, that sort of part of the process.
That's right. Yeah. We draw the line at project management. We're not a full project management tool for that. You can always use something like Jira or ClickUp or whatever. We integrate with the project management tool. And so I think if you're a small company like us, if you're a 12-person company, you can kind of use Canny for project management. But at a bigger company, you should really have a dedicated project management tool where you're sending stuff from Canny over to the project management tool. But yeah, I mean, since we're so small, we can just get away with using Canny for that.
Wow, that's awesome. Excellent. So anything else that you want to share? Any other things that you've learned from sort of, being in the trenches and building up Canny and other stuff you want to share?
Um, I mean, nothing in particular comes to mind. I think something interesting that we talked about earlier was just, growth rates among bootstrap companies. I know you guys said you're growing similar to us. Like, I think it'd be interesting if somebody in the market, kind of standardized that and said, oh, here's what, most growth company or most bootstrap companies grow in year 1, year 2, or when they're at $1 million revenue or 100K annual revenue or whatever it is. And just to give us an idea of like, here's what standard is, like I feel like we don't really have as many people telling us this is what you should be shooting for. And you kind of have to figure it out. And it'd be cool if somebody, collected that data and aggregated it and put it out there for us to see. Or if, I think Profitwell has a way you can dig into like industry wide, how are SaaS companies growing? It'd be cool if they had like a bootstrap tick mark that you could say like only compare bootstrap companies or something like that. I don't know. I think that's one thing that comes to mind. Not really any advice to share, but I don't know, anything in particular you're looking for?
No, I mean, that's definitely a topic that I'm very passionate about. I mean, I find that sometimes my mind gets blown a little bit, and that's one of the reasons that we've never raised money. We did like a very small round of where we sort of allowed people in our developer community to sort of buy some sort of essentially some equity, but that was basically all we've ever really done. That wasn't really a proper fundraise. But other than that, we've been completely bootstrapped, and there's definitely been plenty of opportunities to raise. But I always found it very confusing because a lot of the time it's like, well, if you've raised $200 million and you've turned that into $50 million of ARR, it's like, I never really fully understood the math in the whole thing. It never really. So I think it is a completely different ball game. I think it's going to be a really interesting time. And I think, especially next year or in the next few, as it becomes harder for people to do rounds and things like that, I think there'll be a lot more notes being shared from bootstrap founders. And, so I think we're just like the best way to find that out would be just to keep the discussion going and find out more. But like you said, I think it's cool. Like what I really loved about what you said was that there are other factors, right? There are other things to, it's not just revenue and profit necessarily. Obviously you need that in order to remain healthy, and you need to grow in order to be able to build out the team and, and other, financial goals that you've got. But staying sane is important. Mental health is important. There are other things that are really important. So, so maybe there's no right answer to that. Maybe you just have to grow as fast as you can while still remaining sane and maintaining the, the quality and culture and things like that. It also gets harder to, as you get larger. So if you're doubling every year, then it'll be a lot harder when you're, I mean, doubling 3 times in a row means that the third time you double will be, 246, 248. So if you double it, that means you're going to be really doing the same as the 2 previous doubles in 1 year. So it might not necessarily be as easy. I think you can see more if you look at the public markets, then it's more healthy. Not sort of. I mean, it's more realistic to see real numbers, because those you can actually go and read. What I find is you can actually read financial reports, like quarterly reports that companies put out. They're more real, in my opinion, because you can't really find, you read TechCrunch or something like that, you only see these sort of astronomical valuations or things like that. But yeah, I would say maybe let's get a little bit of a crew happening of different bootstrapped companies, and we'll share some notes.
Yeah, let me know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was definitely great chatting, and I love it when I get off one of these calls and I've got a couple of tools to go and check out. I actually can't wait to go check out this Missive tool, to be honest with you. I actually have been thinking about this sort of a tool. Is this more for like a shared inbox, so for like support and things like that, or is it for like everything? Is that?
I use it for my personal, everybody at our company uses it for their personal inbox and also for shared inboxes. And so, for example, if you email Andrew@canny.io, goes in my, inbox and Missive, just integrates with Google. And then if you email like privacy@canny.io or security or sales or support at like any of those like group email addresses, it'll go to the right inbox and people can like assign it to themselves. You can see in that inbox, like, oh, how many open emails are there in sales? Who should be working on that? Who owns what? you can snooze stuff and say like, oh, get this out of my inbox for a week. I don't need to worry about this. I'm a big fan of inbox zero. And so just having everything just accounted for, like, okay, there's nothing in my inbox that needs to be worried about. Everything's either, closed or snoozed is really big for me. And so, yeah, Missive is the tool that I use every day to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm also 2 or 3 times a week inbox zero sort of person as well. So I can relate to that. Yeah. Not every day, but
yeah.
But yeah, every now and then I see the bottom. All right, awesome. It was great chatting.